So now I think it's time to move to the question and answer session again. I have a couple of questions for our speaker. The first one is for Federico Casolari. So if you are already here in video, I can directly go on with you. The question is, how it is possible to move from an ideal contribution. Sorry, this is for Maratiena. I'm really sorry because usually I'm just reading the chat and okay. Anyway, let's go with this one. And Mara, I see Mara in the video and then I come back to you, Federico, sorry. Mara, how it is possible to move from an ideal contribution for ecosystem services to a real payment for their maintenance? This question comes from someone from the organization, so probably it's a bit more complex than the other one.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Thank you for the question. It's a very interesting one. Can you hear me? Yes, I believe, right? Okay, thank you very much. It's a major challenge, but it can be done for sure. At the beginning of the presentation, I was stressing this concept that I think it's very much important, mainstreaming ecosystem services in everyday life. Thereby implying that it is expensive, of course, to run an optimal use of environmental resources. That is to use them optimally, not to overexploit them. It is expensive, but it can be done because this mechanism allow to rely not only on the incentives and subsidies that can be provided by the authorities, but also on the individual availability, individual willingness to contribute. So the negotiation between what should be gained, what should be needed, and what's left, because the public, the governments cannot, of course, provide support with the full amount of cost of expenses, can be then retrieved by the contribution of the consumers or the rest of the overall population. And these methodologies allow exactly to quantify how much they're willing to contribute. I hope I answered the question somehow.
Yes, I think so. And another one for you, Mara. How is it possible to integrate these economic methodologies in the process of defining the acceptability of risk or the acceptability of uncertainty in the environment risk assessment or agricultural food production? Do you know any experience in this frame that you know that you can share with us?
Thank you. This is another very interesting question. Of course, I did not have time enough. The risk assessment, the risk component, the perception of risk by the population, so it's demand-driven, right, approach. So by the population, it's very much important. Yes, we have case by this. We are working on this, and in any case, other economists are working. For example, in the flood protection, that's very much an area. Think about the catastrophic events that we experienced recently, not only in terms of floods, but also in terms of wind storms. Think about the Vaya experience, the Vaya storm. So there's a clear indication that's important to integrate this into that component. Once again, there are methodologies, partly similar to what I showed, that allow to estimate the risk component and hence to integrate that into the overall assessment of the economic values. I can send some example in case needed for this.
Thank you very much, Mara. Thank you. So the very last question to Federico, I think is an extremely comprehensive question. So the last, but definitely, yeah, I mean, complex, heavy question. So the community strategy on the Green Deal and on the farm to fork approach is clear. I think you really define the picture. But what must be, and I stress must be, the response and commitment in terms of commitments and action of the individual member states to ensure the effective application?
Okay, it's not easy to give an answer in a couple of minutes. let me say that I didn't have the time before to show you how this strategy should be implemented. So basically, there is a roadmap that has been elaborated by the European Commission. The European Commission, as you maybe know, is the institution in charge of adopting proposals for the legislation that the EU may actually adopt. So directives, regulations, and decisions. And the European Commission has elaborated a roadmap by indicating what kind of proposal it has in mind to develop, to adopt, in order to deal with, let's say, the pillars and the principles which are contained in the strategy. So basically, we should have, during these years, some pieces of legislation, regulations, directives, and decisions adopted by the EU institutions that member states are obliged to respect. Member states, but not only member states, also individuals to some extent, because some of EU legal acts are also binding for individuals, I mean natural and legal persons. So basically, member states will be obliged in the next years, in the next months, to implement the obligations. It's possible that the obligations will leave some margin for maneuver to the member states. This is always possible, but still there are principles that are governing the discretion member states have, starting from the principle of sincere cooperation. So states may be free to decide how to reach some goals, some objectives, but they must ensure in any case that EU law will not be affected. So basically, it's difficult to give you a concrete answers by indicating concretely what kind of measures states have to adopt in the next months, in the upcoming months. But the idea is that we will have first some EU acts, mostly binding acts, and then the implementation of these acts by the member states, which is something lacking at universal level. We don't have at universal level this mechanism. We only have implementation by states without binding acts adopted by the Food or Agriculture Organization or UN.
Thank you very much, Federico. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I'm closing this session now, and the question and answer session. As usual, your questions, so the remaining one will be collected and addressed later on and published on the website together with the presentation.